Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Kodamore Toma Vina Ke Dayalu Jagata Samsare Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Kodamore Toma Vina Ke Dayalu Jagata Samsare Patita Pavana Hetu Tavavatara Bosama Patita Prabhu Napai Meyara Pavana Hetu Tavavatara Bhavavakacharya Saraswati Shimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Vishnu Padmanamahamsa Bhavavakacharya Saraswati Shimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnavrinda Ki ISKCON Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Fame Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasiri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopanath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mahi Ki Jamuna Mahi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vinda Ki Shri Shri Radhamadava Asta Sakhi Vinda Ki Shri Shri Panchatattva Ki Gopimananda. All glories to the assembled devotees, glories to the assembled devotees, glories to the assembled devotees, glories to Shri Shri Guru and Guranga.
Small announcement, like different translators are there. I'll just announce the number, which frequency they are.
Go ahead.
हरे कृष्ण सो बांग्ला अनुवाद হচ্ছে 90 9 और रूसी परिभाषा रूसी ट्रांसलेशन 95 95 and Chinese devotees have not come till now. Hindi अनुवाद 93. हरे कृष्ण
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So I've been asked to, this translators, right? So I should try to speak slowly? Yes? Okay, got it. I'm used to this. I've been asked to speak on the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, which is Madhya Lila, chapter 12 of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I picked a verse, well-known verse, and I'll read some of the commentary, and then we'll speak a little bit about Sri Gundicha Marjana. And the verse I'm speaking from is Madhya 12, text 135, for those of you who have it with you on your mobile phones. Imatta Puradvara Age Patayata Sakala Sodhilata Taha Kevarni Beg Kata. Sorry, I can't see so well. Translation. Outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. Purport. In commenting on the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the world leader, was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within one's cleansed and pacified heart. If one wants to see Krishna seated in his heart, he must first cleanse the heart as prescribed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sikshastaka, Cheto Dapana Marjanam. In this age, everyone's heart is especially unclean, as confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Hridyantasto Hyabudani. To wash away all dirty things accumulated within the heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised everyone to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The first result will be that the heart is cleansed, Cheto Dharpana Marjanam. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17 confirms this statement. Shinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Hridyantasto Hyabodani Virunoti Sukrit Satam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul, in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. If a devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord Shri Krishna, Srinvatam Svakata Krishna. This is a simple process. Krishna himself will help cleanse the heart because he is already seated there. Krishna wants to continue living within the heart, and the Lord wants to give directions. But one has to keep his heart as clean as Lord Chaitanya kept the Gundicha temple. The devotee therefore has to cleanse his heart just as the Lord cleansed the Gundicha temple. In this way, one can be pacified and enriched in devotional service. If the heart is filled with straw, grains of sand, weeds, or dust, in other words, anya bilasya purna, one cannot enthrone the Supreme Personality of Godhead there. The heart must be cleansed of all material motives brought about through fruitive work, speculative knowledge, the mystic yoga system, and so many other forms of so-called meditation. The heart must be cleansed without ulterior motive. As Srila Rupa Goswami says, Anyabilashita shunyam jnana kamadhyana vritam. In other words, there should not be any external motive. One should not attempt material upliftment, understanding the Supreme by speculative knowledge, fruitive activity, severe austerity and penance, and so on. All these activities are against the natural growth of spontaneous love of Godhead. As soon as these are present within the heart should be understood to be unclean and therefore unfit to serve as Krishna's sitting place. We cannot perceive the Lord's presence in our hearts unless our hearts are cleansed. I'm going to stop there for now. Om Jnanativarandasya Garanjana Salakaya Chaksha Mundanitam Yena Tasmo Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kodoti Vachalam Pangum Mangayate Garim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shanyavari Paschachade Satarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. As Prabhupada says in the beginning of this commentary, that in this Gundicha Marjana Lila, Lord Chaitanya, as the world leader, was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Krishna within one's cleansed and pacified heart. We know that Lord Chaitanya came to teach by his example what is love of Godhead. And here we see another example how Lord Chaitanya was teaching, particularly how to not only cleanse the Gundicha temple, which is also a very exemplary pastime, but by that pastime he was teaching how attentive one should be to confronting the unwanted desires and obstacles that exist within the heart of the aspiring sadhaka. The Gundicha temple, the cleansing of the Gundicha temple was actually something that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught during his manifest lila. As we know that the Jagannath Racha Yatra festival, when Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra ride on their carts from the Jagannath temple to Gundicha temple, it is actually Lord Chaitanya, the mood of Lord Chaitanya. It was like Krishna coming to Vrindavan. Different examples are given of how Jagannath temple is like a place of opulence, of opulent worship, and the Gundicha temple was compared to be like Vrindavan, are known as the place where Krishna was very much attracted to the spontaneous attitude of affection which was displayed to him by the residents of Vrindavan. And that is one of the characteristics that is displayed because they have clean hearts. When the heart is perfectly clean, then they are far more capable of their displaying their spontaneous affection, which captures Krishna and makes Krishna a plaything in the hands of the devotees. And therefore, in Vrindavan, or in these pastimes, when the Lord goes to Gundicha temple, the Lord stays there for 8 days. And then, actually it's also described, he stays there for some time, and then, of course, Lakshmi, who is the goddess of fortune, she is there and she is wondering, why isn't Krishna coming back? And then after some days, 4 days pass by, and the Lakshmi comes, and she comes with her maid servants, and they go and they to take Krishna back to Vrindavan. She comes with her maid servants, and of course the whole Leela of Hera Panchami, which is not something I'm going to talk about, that will come a little bit later in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But she is very eager to see the Lord keep his promise, and he assured him that he would return. So this pastime takes place. She goes there with her maidservants. They stand outside the gate, and then, of course, they arrest these servants of the Lord who are manifested there, and the whole pastime of Hera Panchami takes place. The point is, though, is that this Lord goes there, stays there for some time, and then he returns, which is the second Rath Yatra, which is Lord Jagannath's return to his temple. And then during that time, the Gundicha temple collects dust and therefore requires to be cleaned. Actually, it's described that after some time, Prabhupada speaks about it, I think, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the commentary. He says that after some time, the Gundicha temple begins to collect dust, and Lord Chaitanya, before receiving Lord Jagannath in the Gundicha temple, he wants to teach by his example how to very nicely cleanse the temple. And therefore, he approaches Kashimisha, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the superintendent of the Jagannath temple, and he expresses a desire that he wants to clean the Gundicha temple in order to prepare it as a very nice place for the Lord to come. Superintendent of the temple, of course, says, I was told by Maharaj Prataparuja that I should fulfill whatever request that you make of me, whatever desire that you have, and certainly I am prepared to do so, but I cannot understand. You are the Supreme Lord. What is it that you're doing in cleansing the temple personally? And I can only understand it to be your remarkable pastime. And therefore, as a display of your remarkable pastimes, I'm waiting to serve you in whatever way you request me. If you want to clean the temple yourself, then I will bring hundreds of brooms, hundreds of pots, and you can bring your associates, and you can begin cleansing the Gundicha temple, which is what the Lord was inclined to do. So the superintendent of the temple provided all of this paraphernalia, and then Lord Chaitanya personally began the process of cleansing the temple. One of the points that is being made here in the verse that we just read is that not only did Lord Chaitanya clean inside the temple, but the verse said that also outside the temple was clean too. And no one can tell exactly how it was done. Inside the temple, Lord Chaitanya went in and he personally gave everyone a broom, and they began to collect all the particles of dirt. And everybody collected dust and sand and everything else that they can find and swept it up, put it in a pile. Lord Chaitanya also, as the ideal teacher, which is one of his purposes in displaying his pastime, he also collected dust, sand, and all kinds of dirt. And of course, his pile was far greater in size than everybody else's all put together. And after he took all the dirt outside the temple, put it very clearly separate from the temple, then he told everybody, okay, now that we've cleaned the temple, now everybody to return to go into the temple and get the finer particles of dust and collect all that and make it perfectly clean. When I think of this pastime, I oftentimes think our temple in Boston, it used to be called Mugundicham. In fact, maybe I don't know if it's still on the Sankirtan sheets of Mugundicham. We named it that way back in the early 1970s. I think it was, I can't remember when we actually named it. It might have been 1975 we named it. And we made it a tradition as part of the following the name of Nugundicha is to have every year to have a Maha cleanup. And we followed the same procedure. All the devotees were required to fully dedicate themselves to cleaning all aspects of the temple, getting the finer particles of dirt, something which I learned when I first moved into the temple in 1973. One of my first services was cleaning the temple room. And at that time, I was given a schedule for cleaning the temple room. I would do one part of the temple room for each day of the week. And then it wasn't a very big temple, but I would have to spend several hours on one part, just cleaning the walls, cleaning the crevices in between the wood on the bottom, crevices on the top, He used to give me a little knife, and he used to give me a cloth, and I would sit down in front of the wall and just go into the crevices. And that was even before Chaitanya Charitamrita came out. I'm bringing this up. That was the standard, cleansing the temple. And Lord Chaitanya wanted to teach the same standard of how important it is to cleanse the temple, because cleansing the temple is like cleansing one's heart. And when the heart is cleansed, of course, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is explaining, then with a cleansed heart, it can be an appropriate place for the Lord to be inclined to sit in the heart. Of course, he's already there in the heart, but as Prabhupada said, he'll be inclined to stay there. And and of course, he always stays with us as well. But he wants to do more than simply sit in the heart and stay there. Then, of course, he is acting within the heart as one who gives sanction and the one who is bearing witness. But there's simply to give sanction and bear witness. There's not so much lila there. It's just simply to give sanction and bear witness. He wants to have a reciprocal relationship. His relationship is that he gives instruction from within the heart, and he enlightens, he cleanses the heart. He cleanses from within the heart, but why does he want to help and assist the devotee in cleansing the heart? Because he wants to bring the devotee up to a more elevated status where there can be a more intimate relationship. So, yes, cleansing the heart means having a nice place for the Lord to sit, but also by cleansing the heart, we become more qualified to understand and be conscious of His presence within the heart. So, and becoming more conscious of His presence within the heart means ultimately we want to be able to someday abide by His direction. And Krishna said, the one who conquers the mind, super soul is reached, he attains tranquility. With such a man, heat and cold, happiness and distress, honor and dishonor is all the same. This is the result of cleansing the heart, conquering the mind, and cleansing the heart. And Lord Chaitanya came to teach that one of the principles that he wanted to establish in cleansing Vindicha temple was that after getting a nice cleansed heart, then the mind would become pacified and cooled. Prabhupada talks about that in the commentary. Just like marble, when the marble is clean, it becomes very, very cool. And Prabhupada also explains that when the heart is cleansed, the mind is very pacified and cooled, and the result is no disturbances there from within the mind. This is the result of Cetodharpanamarjanam. So by cleansing the temple, Chaitanya wanted to teach that by cleansing the temple, you clean your heart and make it a nice place to sit. I oftentimes tell a story also. So many devotees have heard this before, but I remember also the first time, no, not the first time, the second time I visited the temple. I was living in a hippie commune, and living with many other people we were all vegetarians, and we all used to cook, but nobody liked to clean. Nobody. And because I had visited the temple, and I learned that whenever you cook something for Krishna, first thing you have to do is you have to have a very nice, clean atmosphere, and all the pots, the kitchen, and everything should be clean, and only then can you begin cooking. So, because I lived with a large group of hippies who never were inclined to clean, whenever they would cook, they would always leave their plates behind. It became part of a tradition of our commune that whenever I would cook, the kitchen would get cleaned. And sometimes there'd be a very huge stack of pots, which I voluntarily did, but gradually you can imagine, in due course of time, I started to become a little resentful, having to always clean the kitchen in preparation for making an offering to Krishna. So when I visited the temple, second, maybe third time. I came to the temple and the devotee, he asked me, would you like to do some devotional service? I said, sure. And he said, come with me. So he brought me into the back room of the temple. And there was a huge stack of pots. I mean, I couldn't understand how is it that such a huge stack of pots was there in Krishna's temple. And then, of course, I began to understand that maybe these pots were being left for me. So, but I was thinking this must be some kind of joke, because here I am always washing pots all the time, and now I've come to the temple, and the first thing they ask me to do is wash pots. So I was washing pots, and my mind was so agitated, disturbed, at having to complete this task. And one devotee came over to me, and he looked at me with a very bright face, very enthusiastic. He said, looked me in the eyes, he said, when you clean Krishna's pots, you clean your heart. And when I heard that, I just thought about it, and I said, wait a minute, I've been cleaning pots for quite some time now. But these are Krishna's pots I'm being asked to clean. Something very fundamentally different between these pots and the other pots that I've been washing all the time. And all of a sudden, like there's a complete transformation of consciousness. I went 180 degrees into the concept of the idea that I was given a chance to clean Krishna's pots. And by cleaning Krishna's pots, now I was giving a chance to clean my heart. Needless to say, it was the first very profound realization that I had in 40 North Beacon Street at our temple where I went to serve at that time. That cleaning Krishna's temple, cleaning his pots, means cleaning the heart. And Lord Chaitanya wanted to teach that, not only by cleaning the temple, but by cleaning the temple, we're also cleaning our hearts. Why? Because by cleaning the hearts, then the Lord becomes very much inclined to, as Prabhupada said in the commentary, to stay there and to accept the service and to act from within the heart to remove all the obstacles, all the unwanted things that are there in the heart, which was taught by Lord Chaitanya's second cleaning. When he went in there the second time, he was going in for the finer particles of dust. And not only does he say, going and gathering all the gross, fruitive, material desires, they have to be confronted and cleansed from the heart. But the second attempt, getting the finer particles of dust, means getting the more subtle desires that are there within the heart, which also need to be cleansed. And the point that is being made here in this verse, that, and is stated in the commentary, that Lord Chaitanya was teaching that not only that you have to clean within the heart, but he cleaned outside. He said outside the gate, the verse says, outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. And Prabhupada explains in the commentary why outside was clean too. He says the reason why the outside was clean, he said, I'll read it, we didn't read it yet. He said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cleansed the outside of the temple, fearing that the grains of sand would again come within. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that even though one may become free from the desire for fruitive activity, sometimes the subtle desire for fruitive activity again comes into being within the heart. In other words, we may spend so much time cleaning with the heart, but all of it is, when the doors are opened, one blast of wind, if there's all this dirt outside, it'll all come back in. Maybe some of you may even experience something like this once before. You do everything you can to keep everything clean. somebody opens the door. I remember, of course, in the cold weather, somebody opens the door and blast the wind comes in and so much else, other things come in. So not only cleaning inside, but he was very meticulous also to clean everything outside. Why? So that these particles of dirt outside would not come in at an unwanted or unexpected way. So they are the more subtle anarthas that are there within the heart. Before I get into this, because it's in the commentary, I also wanted to bring up another very important point. That when Lord Chaitanya was cleansing the Gundicha temple, of course, he taught by his example, as we already explained. He was very busy cleaning everything and teaching everybody how to clean very nicely. Then after everything was cleaned, he called them and asked them to bring pots of water in, and he began throwing the water up in the ceiling, and the water came down on the walls and began cleaning the floors. And then he would go up to others and he would personally tell those who were doing exceptionally good cleaning. He would speak to them and say, very, very nice the way you are cleaning. This is very ideal. And then if others weren't keeping up to the standard, Lord Chaitanya would immediately make a statement to the effect that, oh, you're not doing your job. You're not being very attentive. Look what he's doing. And then he would say to the person who was teaching by his example, he says, you should now clean everything so nicely. And because you're cleaning so nicely, you should show others also how to clean very nicely. What is Lord Chaitanya actually instructing in this example? He's saying that a devotee should learn how to clean his heart. And with a clean heart, he can be very effective in helping others to clean their hearts. And that is what the point that he's actually making. It's in this verses here. When he saw someone doing nicely, the Lord praised him. But if he saw that someone was not working to his satisfaction, the Lord's satisfaction, he immediately chastised that person, not bearing him any grudge. The Lord would say, you have done well. Please teach this to others so they may act in the same way. As soon as they heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say this, everyone became ashamed. Thus the devotees began to work with great attention. In other words, of course, we may not always expect the same response, especially a spontaneous response. We see somebody's recognized and we're not recognized, and before fault is pointed out in our service, we immediately may defend ourselves and think, why? Why did you recognize him? Can't you at least recognize me? See what I did? But Lord Chaitanya, he would immediately chastise that person, not bearing any grudge. Of course, this is another point also. That not bearing any grudge is that when the Lord chastised somebody, his primary motive was for the benefit of the recipient. And because the recipient could understand that the Lord was only thinking of my benefit, he's inspiring me to become more attentive to my service. How fortunate I am. How fortunate I am to receive such a chastisement from the Lord. So, because the Lord's heart was clean, because he was teaching by his own example. He was teaching by his own example because he was cleaning more and better than anybody else present there. So by his example, he inspired. I was once doing some reference. Prabhupada speaks about this point quite frequently. In many places, he says, example is more important than precept. I did a research in the Veda base, and I think it's at least 70, 75 hits. Prabhupada said, example is better than precept. We heard it before. But what does actually Prabhupada mean? When he says, this is what Lord Chaitanya is teaching. He would point out, by his own example, he would be very effective to point out those who were doing very nicely, and by his own example, he would be very effective to point out those who were not doing as nicely. So effective, because the example was there. How can anybody argue? How can anybody complain? Because example is even more important than precept. Therefore, potency is there. And therefore, the Lord was telling those devotees who were cleaning nicely, he was telling them, yes, you clean so very nicely. You learned how to clean your heart so nicely, with a clean heart. Just like Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when he prays to the Lord, he speaks about the nature of of devotional service. And he prays and he says, may all living entities become pacified. May all living entities become free from envy. And he says, because when one is actually free from envy, his mind becomes pacified. And then, only then, can he think of the welfare of others. Why? Because his mind is absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And that is Prahlad's prayer. How do they become free from envy, pacified mind? They can think of others' welfare. In fact, I oftentimes bring up the point that in that verse, the word envious in the Sanskrit is kala. That is an envious person. And in the word-for-word commentary, Prabhupada translates the word kala, and in parentheses, he puts almost everyone. Almost everyone. Look it up. It's in 5th canto, 12th chapter, 19th verse, I think it is, of the Bhagavatam. Almost everyone. So when a person's mind is pacified by the strength of bhakti, he can think of the welfare of others, and he can teach others how to clean the heart. And Prabhupada actually explains in the commentary of that verse, he said a person who is, one of the characteristics of a non-envious person is that a non-envious person, he is liberal in his social dealings with others. Why can he be liberal in his social dealings with others? Because he's very strict with himself. A person who's very strict with himself can teach by his example. Example is better than precept, as Prabhupada says. He's very strict in himself. He doesn't have to constantly point out the faults in others. If he's very strict by his own behavior, he's non-envious, he can be liberal in his dealings with others. Because others will see by his example, he is strictly following, and what to speak of when his mind is peaceful and pacified and satisfied and happy. People become inclined to want to find out what's the formula. What's the formula for having a peaceful mind, being happy in devotional service, thinking of others' welfare? Like sometimes devotees, even a very common question I get, because sometimes devotees ask me questions about devotee care, and they ask questions, can you tell me how is it you can have a start or begin a devotee care program in our temple? What do we need to know? And the first thing I tell them is that, well, if you want to have a devotee care program, the first thing you need to have is care for the devotees. Logical, isn't it? If you care for the devotees, then devotee care hardly bad. But sometimes devotees think, well, let's get the program together first. When we get the program together, when we get all the parts in place and everything perfectly organized, very systematically, and you get everything together, then devotee care will naturally be there. But if you have a program but you don't have care, then nobody's going to feel cared for. Everyone's going to feel as if they're just a resource for somebody who wants to have a position of caring for somebody. Another person on my cared for list that I have. My list is growing. But care means that the heart has to become clean, as Prahlad Maharaj says. When the heart is clean, when non-enviousness manifests in the heart, then what happens is gradually one can begin to think about others. Why? Because Krishna takes care of him. He feels Krishna's protection. Krishna is acting from within the heart. Process of reciprocation is gradually growing. As Krishna says, I'm seated within the heart. I'm there to give knowledge from within the heart. I want to reveal everything to the living entities within the heart, but it's reciprocal. To the degree that there's surrender, then the Lord within the heart reciprocates. So Lord Chaitanya is actually preaching, by his example, how to clean the heart to become an effective instrument for the Sankirtan movement. I mean, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this is his commentary, but he also said that the Siddha Pranali for Gaudiya Vaishnavas is Trinadapi Sunichina Torariva Sahishtana Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Siddhahari. The means for perfection for all Gaudiya Vaishnavas is this verse from Shikshastika prayers. Ready to offer all respect to others, but never expecting respect for oneself. One should be so tolerant. A tree is so tolerant that Lord Chaitanya says, you break the branch, it will never complain. And even if it's drying up, it will never ask anyone for water. This is the nature, this is Lord Chaitanya's instructions behind this verse. When the mind is so practiced to tolerance, the mind is so practiced to offering respect, proper respect to others. Srila Jiva Goswami oftentimes quotes this verse from Bhakti Sandarbha. He explains what disrespect is. And he quotes a verse in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which defines what disrespect. He says, disrespect means to intentionally cause pain to another living being. And he quotes the verse from the 11th canto. He says, sharp arrows that pierce the chest and approach the heart, they are not as painful as the arrows and insulting words of a materialist, which pierce the heart, enter into the heart, and become lodged there. He says, this is a difference. He said, when you fire an arrow, it approaches the heart. But when you shoot an arrow, and he defines this as disrespect. Disrespect means to fire an arrow of an insult for the purpose of causing pain. When you insult somebody for the purpose of causing pain, that is disrespect for other living entities. And Lord Chaitanya has told everyone. Raised his hands in Chaitanya Bhagavat. I raise my hands to anyone who simply chants my name and never criticizes any living entity, I will certainly deliver him. He's teaching, again by his example. So a devotee never tries to intentionally cause pain to any living being. Sometimes, as we said before, someone may have to chastise, somebody may have to correct, but he's never thinking, I'm doing this because I want to see him in pain. I want to see him suffer. I want to see her suffer. So I'm hurling this insult so I can watch them defend themselves, get angry, and feel pain. Well, this is not Vaishnava. It's just like this, the example of Megari the hunter. Megari the hunter had the same mentality, and Narada Muni corrected him. Megari the hunter, he was firing arrows and he was half killing. The arrows would enter into the body and he would enjoy seeing the animals half dead, writhing in pain. And when Narada Muni saw Megari and he saw what was happening when he searched him out and questioned, are you the person behind responsible for these activities? He said, yes. He said, tell me, why do you purposely cause them pain by half killing them. Better than half killing them. It's your dharma to kill animals. You're a hunter, but kill them. Don't half kill them. Why are you intentionally causing them pain? So it's the same principle. So a Vaishnava never wishes to cause pain intentionally to any living being. And therefore, he can think of others' welfare. When he instructs, when he chastises, when he corrects, he does it because he understands in his heart, my heart, my motive is not to cause pain. My motive is because I want to help this person. I care. And because Lord Chaitanya taught by that example, he taught when he instructed and chastised, what is being said right here, as soon as they heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say this, as soon as they heard him say this, everyone became ashamed. Thus the devotees began to work with great attention. They were so eager because Lord Chaitanya was the perfect example on how to clean the heart and how to teach others to clean the heart and how to instruct others with clean heart to be a good example, to teach others, help others to clean their hearts. This is the effective method. And of course, cleaning the temple is one way, and of course the other is Chaitodapana Majanam Mava Mahadeva Varpanam, cleansing the heart from all the dust accumulated for years together in the fire of the Sankirtan movement, of hearing and chanting the holy names of the Lord. Prabhupada in the commentary today, in the beginning of the commentary, he speaks about chanting. And am I speaking too fast? I just forgot somebody's translating. I have a tendency to do this. Yes? Am I going too fast? What language? Russian. Простите. Я постараюсь. Медленно. Забыл. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, Shrinvata Svakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Hridantyasto Yabadam Hiri Vidunoti Suhitritam. The Sri Krishna, the super soul situated in the heart of every living being, he cleanses desire for material enjoyment in the heart of that person who develops the urge to hear his messages when they are properly heard and chanted. This Prabhupada quotes that verse right here in the beginning of the purport. He says, the first result will be that the heart is cleansed. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this statement, Shrinvata Svakata Krishna. And he says, if a devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord Shri Krishna. Shrinvata Svakata Krishna. This is the simple process of cleansing the heart. In fact, there is that very well-known verse in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Jata Sharu Madkatasu, where Krishna is speaking about having awakened faith. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories. Being disgusted with sense gratification. Knowing that all sense gratification leads to suffering. But a devotee still can't give it up. Try to follow this. I'll repeat it. Having awakened the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with sense gratification, knowing that all sense gratification leads to suffering, but still not being able to give it up. My devotee, he should go on worshiping with me with faith and conviction, and he should be happy. Because my devotee knows that even if he engages in some sense gratification, and it will lead to some suffering, he will sincerely repent within his heart. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in the commentary, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains elsewhere. He says this verse is the very beginning of bhakti. It begins right here. Bhakti begins at this stage, when a devotee has awakened faith in hearing Krishna's pastimes. Because having awakened faith in hearing Krishna's pastimes, then Krishna acts from within the heart to help that devotee overcome Shinvatasvakata Krishna Punyashavana Kirtan. He takes away, removes the obstacles in the heart. If the devotee simply goes on hearing, sometimes if we're not careful, we may be hearing, and then when we hear something, we think about some attachment that is there that becomes it's embedded there in the heart. It's very hard to give it up. Ever have this experience when you're hearing class and then you start to think, oh, he's talking about me. And then your mind starts thinking, I've been through this before. I'm not ready for it yet. I'm not ready for this much surrender. And all of a sudden you can't hear because you're so much absorbed in protecting that attachment that you can't hear. And the result is that we can't hear because the mind is fixed on protecting, because we're thinking this attachment, I can't give it up, I'll suffer. And then we begin to think that if I go on hearing what's being spoken, if I can completely dedicate myself to hearing these pastimes, and if Krishna is acting from within the heart to take away these obstacles and attachments within the heart, and if I don't watch what he's doing, he may take it away when I'm not looking. And therefore we have to be very attentive. I have to think about protecting my attachments. But that's what Krishna is saying in that verse, Jata Shatu Matkatasu. A devotee knows that these attachments, they lead to suffering. He knows they lead to suffering. He's disgusted with it. He knows they lead to suffering. But somehow he still can't seem to give them up. But he has enough faith. He has enough faith that I will go on listening. I will go on listening. I will not give up listening. I will not give up hearing about Krishna. Because that's the only way to overcome these obstacles, not protecting these attachments. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also explains in the commentary, he says, for the devotee who's awakened this faith, because his attachment is greater to hearing about Krishna than his attachments are for his sense gratification. Then what happens is that Krishna gradually acts to remove these obstacles within the heart. As long as there are more. Sometimes we begin to balance. And sometimes we think, how am I ever going to be free from lust, anger, greed? How am I ever going to be freed from kutinat, fault finding? How am I going to be freed from duplicity? How am I going to be freed from pride? How am I ever going to be free from the desire for puja, desire for respect? How am I going to be free from jiva hingsa, envy of other living entities? The devotee feels almost like it's impossible. I can't do it on my own. But that's where it starts. When a devotee understands, I can't do it on my own, then he becomes very eager to take shelter in hearing the topics that relate to pure devotional service. Because pure devotional service is so powerful, as also explained in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Pure devotional service is so potent that simply by hearing about it, simply by repeating it in response, simply by meditating on it, simply by faithfully and respectfully accepting that pure devotional exists. It may not be in my heart, but it exists. Therefore, I'm going to go on hearing about it. And simply by praising the service of others, even a person who's envious of all living entities throughout the whole universe can become purified. 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 12th verse, or maybe 3rd chapter, 12th verse. instructions, Narada's instructions to Vasudeva. And therefore, a devotee, he has faith that, yes, I'm not pure devotee. I'm not situated in pure devotional service, but I have faith. It exists. I want to hear about it. I want to continue to hear about it. I have faith that if I continue to hear about it, then gradually that envy that's there within the heart, the obstacles that are there within the heart, they'll gradually become removed from the Lord who is situated within the heart. He will help. He's helping to cleanse the heart, both by his example and by, of course, manifesting himself in his names. He acts from within the heart. As he's teaching in this pastime, both through hearing and through chanting the holy names of the Lord. This is a little bit about what's to be learned from this pastimes of cleansing the Gundicha temple that Lord Chaitanya came to teach in that example of what does it mean to clean the temple? What does it mean to get the finer particles of dust, to clean them out? What does it mean to clean outside? So that when there's a gust of wind, and there'll be nothing to be dragged back in. We'll be able to keep it clean. And he also says that it means that we may be free from the more gross types of sense gratification, but the more finer particles that are imperceptible and difficult to find. And as all the devotees, when they went in to clean the finer particles, they put together all their dust and they came out and collected it. And then Lord Chaitanya did the same. He came out and showed everybody how little they collected by his example. Cleaning the heart. So this is the meaning of the Gundicha Marjanam pastime, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the world leader, was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within one's cleansed and pacified heart. I'm going to stop because in 10 minutes Devamrita Maharaj is supposed to begin class. And I don't... Huh?
If you're chanting and hearing, it's enough for cleaning the heart, or it's necessary to make some additional effort.
Well, it depends what we're chanting and what we're hearing. If you're chanting water, 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 in other words, yes, we have to be chanting Krishna's name, chanting Krishna's glories. There's Leela Sankirtan, there's Nam Sankirtan, there's Rupa Sankirtan, and there's different forms of Sankirtan. And also it's explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the example of Haridas Thakur, when Rupa Goswami had composed that verse about the holy name of the Lord, how when it enters into the courtyard of his mind, his senses become inert, and he wants to have millions of tongues and millions of ears. And when he read that verse at the request of Lord Chaitanya, Haridas Thakur, just by hearing the verse, he went into ecstasy and he fell on the ground by hearing the composition of Rupa Goswami's verse. And Kaviraj Goswami explains that one has to learn the truth and beauty of the Lord's holy names by hearing the revealed scriptures from the mouths of Vaishnavas. There's no other way to taste the sweetness of Krishna's names. So yes, by chanting the name and by hearing the glories of the holy name from the mouths of Vaishnavas who help us to understand what is the actual goal of chanting the holy name of the Lord. And when proper hearing is there, and then proper chanting is there, then that's what will cleanse the heart. So faith means I want to hear these topics. I want to hear topics which inspire or encourage me to become inclined towards pure bhakti, Shuddha bhakti. Other topics, and Prabhupada talks about, this is the other part I wanted to get to. Prabhupada defines what are some of the other topics which we should really avoid in the commentary. I'll just mention them from the purport very quickly. And continue. No, Maharaj. No. I can't do that. He says, that Thakur explains that even though one may become free from the desire for fruitive activity, sometimes the subtle desire for fruitive activity again comes into being within the heart. One often thinks of conducting business to improve devotional activity. He gives this as an example. Devotional activity doesn't improve by conducting business. One can certainly conduct the business and offer it for the satisfaction of the Lord, but it's not the business in of itself which improves devotional service. One engages in business for the purpose of maintaining, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in Vaishnava Siddhantamala. He says that if he doesn't conduct the business to maintain body and soul and to maintain the family members, then his body will untimely expire, and he won't have a body for fulfilling the ultimate goal of utilizing his body to its full potential, which is hearing and chanting, or which he says is kirtaniya sadahari, always chanting the holy names of the Lord. So when a devotee is always thinking that the goal of my business is to maintain the body, maintain the bodies of others, and to, of course, to serve the preaching mission, and to serve the spreading of pure devotion, the glories of pure devotional service, one who is in the right consciousness, he's not thinking of conducting business to improve devotional service. The devotional service is already there. He's expanding it by his service. He's expanding spreading the glories of pure devotional service by his assistance in his business. But he's not thinking that his business is, as Prabhupada says right here, he says that one often thinks of conducting business to improve devotional activity. Devotional activity is already improved. Pure devotional service is already pure. Doesn't require a business to purify it. And those who glorify pure devotional service, they will certainly help take the assistance of others to expand pure devotional service in whatever way they may wish to assist the spreading of the glories of pure devotional service. But it's not the business that purifies devotional service. It's already purified by the persons who are spreading it. And of course, the persons who are engaged in business purely motivated, they also can teach by their example in the ways that we spoke about in the beginning of class. So there are many other topics, as I said. He said that one's real desire may be for name and fame. One may want name and fame. One may be duplicitous. He may attempt to imitate Haridas Thakur by living in a solitary place. And then one's real desire may be for name and fame. In other words, one thinks that fools will accept one to be as good as Haridas Thakur just because one lives in a solitary place. These are all material desires. A neophyte devotee is certain to be attacked by other material desires as well, namely desires for women and money. In this way, the heart is again filled with dirty things that becomes harder and harder, like that of a materialist. Anyways, there are other things I didn't mention. Go ahead. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for this beautiful piece. Maharaj, you mentioned this attachment. We have a strong attachment in our heart for enjoying this material world. The desires are so strong. And also you mentioned...
Strong attachment. Is that what you said?
We have very strong attachment.
Yes, okay.
To enjoy this material world. As well as we have faith, with faith, that slowly it will be cleansed one day. And but still the enjoying tendency is still there. So to keep up the patience till the time Krishna cleanses the heart completely, like it troubles us, it disturbs us. So I'm talking about Manoj, how to keep up like to patience and faith that one day will come, I will be completely cleansed of all my material desires.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes this in Sri Bhakti Loka. He speaks about dharya, or patience. And he explains that, he defines patience. He says that the three types of transcendentalists, the karmi, the jnanis, and the bhaktas, says they all want to have some result for their activities. The karmi, he wants to enjoy some fruitive gain. The jnani, he also wants a result. He wants liberation. And the bhakta also wants some result. Of course, we've always heard Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Atayeva Shanta, Bhakti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakaliya Shanta. The devotee is not interested in any results. He's only interested in pleasing Krishna. So how can we understand that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying that the bhakta also wants a result? And he explains that the result the bhakta wants is Krishna's pleasure. Someday or other, Krishna will be pleased by my activities. But getting Krishna's pleasure isn't always so cheap. It's not so easy. You know? Prahlad Maharaj says in the fifth canto of the Bhagavatam, he says, "Oh my friends, oh sons of demons, you can't please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even if you become expert Brahmins, or advance in etiquette or vast learning, nor by austerities, nor by accepting vows, nor by chastity, nor by great sacrifices." You think all these things are pretty auspicious. He says, no, none of these things will awaken Krishna's pleasure. He says the Lord is pleased only when one has unflinching faith, unflinching, unalloyed faith in the Lord. Without sincere devotional service, everything else is simply a show. So it's not so easy to get Krishna's pleasure. Even if you perform austerities, great sacrifices, accept vows, chastity, these aren't necessarily the criteria for awakening Krishna's pleasure. He's pleased when there's bhakti. So, therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, therefore, sometimes we see the sadhakas, they become impatient and they give up their sadhana because they don't get Krishna's pleasure so quickly. He says they're too impatient. He says what patience means. He defines patience as a devotee, a sadhaka, must have enough faith to accept that I will go on serving Krishna. I will never give up serving Krishna. Even if I don't get the fruit of my service now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, or 100 lives from now, I will never give up serving Krishna. He said, this much faith is required. This is patience. He defines that. This is patience. Now, of course, I oftentimes use the example that when we hear something like that, we're thinking, oh, lifetimes? Come on. I mean, I need to get a little, can I get a little, at least a little indication, a little encouragement that I'm moving in the right direction? I'm struggling and it's really hard. And sometimes we feel that way. But nonetheless, we oftentimes give the example of Mukunda Dat. Mukunda Dat, when Lord Chaitanya was engaged in his Shatapraharya Leela, his ecstasy of 21 hours, and he was calling all the devotees one by one to come before him, and he wanted to grant them benedictions. And Mukunda Dat was standing behind the curtain, and he was saying to Srivas, can you ask him when he'll call upon me? When will he call? He's waiting very patiently. And everybody was very hesitant to bring this up to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, finally Srivas said that asked, what about your devotee Mukundadat? He said, oh, that Mukundadat, he will not see me again for 10 million births. And he explains because of his previous association he had. And then when Mukundadat heard that he will see me again for 10 million births, Mukundadat began dancing in ecstasy, waving his arms. And he was crying out, I will see, I will see, I will see. He had so much faith in the words of the Lord. When the Lord said he will see, 10 million births was irrelevant. He will see, and that's all he heard. And he said, call Mukundadat, tell him I want to see him. Of course, Mukundadat was so ecstatic, dancing, that they had to pick him up and carry him and bring him before the Lord, because he was so absorbed. He had that much faith in the Lord's words. So millions of births can be reduced to a few moments by the mercy of the Lord if we have faith. That much faith we have to have. And that's what Jata Shratu Mat Katasu means. We have enough faith that I won't give up hearing about Shuddha Bhakti. So many other topics can be discussed. But if I don't continue to hear about pure devotional service, then I'll be very easily bewildered into thinking there's something higher. And that's what Prabhupada is warning about in this commentary. Be very careful. Thinking that there's something higher than hearing and chanting the glories of pure devotional service. There's nothing higher. I have to end. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. For wonderful class. So we all thank to Maharaj by chanting Hare Krishna once. Praising the Lord. Louder. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Do you need this? Do you need my book?